single dad braced for a loveless arranged marriage, until the bride's veil drop stopped his heart. The storm had broken over the city long before the clouds began to thunder. For Daniel Rafik, the real storm had begun weeks ago, on the night he walked into his tiny, dimly lit living room and found his 6-year-old daughter asleep at the table, her little hands curled around a cold bowl of lentils she had tried to save for him. The sight had shaken him. It had reminded him how much he had already lost, and how much more he could still lose. And so, when his uncle told him he had arranged a marriage proposal in a distant village, a match without love, without choice, without hope, Daniel had simply nodded, knowing he no longer had the luxury of refusing. He needed stability for his daughter. He needed shelter. He needed something, anything, that would keep their fragile life from collapsing again. But as he stood at the gates of a house he had never seen before, preparing to marry a woman he had never met, a hollow ache pressed into his ribs. He believed he was walking into a future built from sacrifice, not love, not warmth, not healing, just survival, until the moment the bride's veil dropped and the world he knew shattered like glass. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us how fragile life can be, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to KH Stories to help us keep bringing moments like these to you. The road to the marriage had not been simple. Daniel was a 32-year-old single father carrying too many invisible wounds. His wife, his first love, had passed away during childbirth, leaving behind a premature baby girl wrapped in hospital blankets and a man who had forgotten how to breathe without feeling guilty. Her death had carved a quietness inside him that never fully healed. For 6 years, he had worked small mechanic jobs, taken whatever daily labor came his way, and stitched his days together with worry and exhaustion. His daughter, Era, was the reason he kept moving, but life had a way of cornering people like him. The landlord had raised the rent. His workplace had cut hours, and Era's school had warned that repeated late fees could result in her leaving the classroom she loved. Daniel hated the idea of marrying someone for convenience. He hated feeling like he was surrendering, but love wasn't what life was offering him. Life was offering survival, and survival was all he had left to accept. So he traveled to the village where the match had been arranged. The house was old but well kept, surrounded by date trees that swayed under the evening wind. Inside, there were more people than he expected, relatives speaking softly, women carrying tea trays, children running through hallways. None of them knew him. None of them cared who he had been or what he had suffered. To them, he was just the man chosen for a girl who had, for reasons no one fully explained, been left unmarried past what the village considered a suitable age. They told him she was quiet, respectful, and obedient. They said she had no demands. They said she was simple. But none of this comforted him. He wasn't looking for someone obedient. He wasn't looking for someone who would bow her head and pretend to accept a life that neither of them chose. He wanted a mother for his daughter. He wanted a partner who understood heartbreak, who understood trying, who understood beginning again. But he didn't dare expect that anymore. The ceremony began quietly, with murmured prayers and the scent of rosewater drifting through the courtyard. Daniel sat with his hands clasped tightly, watching the door where the bride would appear. His heart pounded, not with excitement, but with guilt, fear, and the heavy sense that he was doing something wrong. He was choosing a stranger to raise the child he cherished. He was choosing a life he had no chance to question. And then she walked in. She was covered in a traditional veil, soft white fabric gently draping down to her wrists. She moved with a calm grace, the kind that suggested she wasn't afraid, even though her future was about to be rewritten. Daniel looked at her hands, noticing the way her fingers trembled slightly, as though she was fighting emotions she didn't want to reveal. They sat side by side, separated by the veil, separated by fate, separated by secrets neither of them yet knew. The officiant recited the formalities, relatives watched, children whispered, and Daniel felt numb, as though this moment wasn't his, as though he was simply a character in a story someone else was writing. And then someone bumped into the bride from behind. A small child running through the courtyard had brushed the edge of her dress, and in that instant, the delicate veil slipped from her head. It fluttered down like a feather,